are in Kona, Hawaii, a few days prior to the Hawaii IronMan World Championships, where the best athletes in the world are here to compete, to be their best, to go for a personal best. And it's quite fitting that Cervélo chose this venue to launch the P5X, a bike that is designed to bring athletes to their personal best. I raced here for 11 years with Cervélo. I was so fortunate to always be able to ride a cutting-edge bike. I'm retired now from professional triathlon, but boy, I wish I had an opportunity to race that P5X. And the technology behind it, they've taken everything into account regarding proper hydration and the storage of your food and your nutrition, all the things that really set this race apart. Nutrition, hydration are so important, and Cervélo has taken that into account with this bike.
So how do we decide to approach this project? We did it differently than we've done in the past with other projects. We decided that we really need to go back and look at how triathlon bikes are used. Triathlon is very different than time trial. The two positions look similar, and the riding experience is very similar. But that's where it ends, right? The triathlete has to do all this stuff himself. He has to pack his bike, he has to travel with his bike, he has to unpack and rebuild his bike. He has to put all his food and all his nutrition and water on his bike. The time trialist just gets everything done for him by the team bus, right? So it's a very different experience overall, even though the riding is very similar. So we spent almost a year doing research before we even drew a picture or sketched any kind of design concepts. And that was really involved in all aspects of how triathletes use the bikes, from looking at race courses to how often they train, interviewing athletes, both pros and age groupers, and going to races. We looked at special needs areas, speed zones, the transition areas, all kinds of places. But one of the biggest parts of that was taking pictures. We took over 14,500 pictures of athletes riding their bikes at various Ironman and half Ironman events to really understand what were they doing, how were they using the bike, what did they have on the bike, how did they set it up. That's how the bikes are really used. We learned a lot in the research. One of the key things was learning about that everyone had different setups or favorite ways of setting up the bike, different places of putting things. Of the 2,800 triathlon bikes pictures that we looked at, only 3.8% had the same setup, and it was the most common one. Most people had very different setups. Certain people like round bottles, or something like aero bottles, bottle behind, bottle in front. There's so many variations. And what it really told us was we had to have flexibility in our design. We couldn't just say, this is the best setup, use it, because nobody would be happy. So based on all the research, the year of work we did prior to starting the project, we came up with 7 scope priorities to define what we wanted out of this bike. And the first one was modular integrated storage with easy access. We really wanted to be sure that the athletes could have the storage they needed, carry the things they needed to carry with them on the race, but also be flexible so they could set up how they wanted to, but still be integrated, not have things stuck on the bike.
When we approached the design of the storage on this frame, we wanted to try and utilize the volume inside the frame cavity itself as much as possible. And so what we've done is we have our storage bag up at the front actually extends into the frame for additional volume, and the in-frame storage uses the cavity at the front for storage.
Nutrition is a personal thing. So we provided options and ways in which you can set up your nutrition and storage solutions that personally makes you comfortable in your setup.
It's really nice to finally on a race bike have a really sleek place to put a flat kit. because in Ironman you're responsible for, for changing your own flats, so having a CO2 and a tire lever, and that's all tucked away nicely in the frame. Before you were taping it up in a bottle cage or stuffing it somewhere, and now it's just out of sight and clean, and it's a really good feature.
The second priority was compatible with round bottles. We wanted to make sure we could use round bottles on this bike. If you have round bottles, then you have the ability to use round or aero. But if you don't have the ability to use round bottles, then people won't be happy because most people like the round bottles. We really wanted to include that as a key priority in our design.
On the P5X, we provide locations for 3 bottles. The first one being in the front, between the arms. It's a really good position. It can be very aero, and it reminds you to drink. We also have an integrated custom single bottle mount in the rear, which is adjustable fore and aft relative to the saddle, and adjustable in angle, so you can choose the way you like it. We also have a horizontal bottle mounted on top of the speed case, but if you don't use the speed case, you can have your bottle mounted diagonally on the down tube.
In an Ironman, that's important for me because the bottles you grab from the aid stations, they don't quite fit in a bottle cage properly, so it can't sit horizontally. It needs to sit a little bit more vertical. So I leave that space for the bottles I grab from aid stations.
The third priority was making it easy to fit the athlete to the bike. We know that fit is very important for aero. It's one of the most important things for aero and for comfort and for the race. And so if you have a bike that's super fast but you can't fit, then it's very difficult to go fast on it. So having the athlete fit on the bike was very important to us.
Fit is a very personal thing. So we've made this bike to where it is very adjustable to fit your personal needs.
The reach adjustment on the bike is through incremental spaces in the pad holder itself to get fore-aft adjustment and lateral in-out adjustment. You can also make a large change in fore-aft adjustment by taking the pad and extension bracket and turning it 180 degrees to the rearward position.
The front end, with 112 millimeters of stack adjustment and 91 millimeters of reach adjustment, allow for a broad range of fit. So what happens is this bike can take on unique and multiple personalities to, be a long and low bike or a short and tall bike because of this front end adjustment.
So the base bar on this bike is quite unique. The first feature is that we've designed it with a drop, and it's built in a way that allows you to mount it either drop down, or you can flip it and mount it on the bike this way to get an upward rise to your base bar. This allows the athlete to choose what kind of drop they want from their pads to their base bar.
This bike comes in 4 sizes: small, medium, large, and extra large. Those 4 sizes allow a broader fit range than the entire 7 sizes of the Cervélo P5. With this fit range, it ensures that each client can find their perfect fit on the Cervélo P5X.
The fourth priority was easy to adjust position after fit. So on our current crop of superbikes, they're very difficult to adjust the position of the rider. Once you've set it up, it runs great, but if you want to change it a little bit, it can be very, very difficult. You have to remove spacers, cut steerers, do all kinds of crazy things just to adjust your position a few millimeters. So in this bike, we really want to make it easy for athletes to adjust their position by a little bit after they had set up initially.
And that's the great thing with the P5X. I mean, you can adjust the front end of that bike so easily. I mean, 1 4-mil Allen key, and you can go from a little bit more of a relaxed position to a really slammed down aero, like full-on time trial position.
When we approached the design of the front end of this bike, what we did is we first prioritized the adjustments that we wanted to be the most easy for the user. Our first priority was to allow a very simple adjustment of the vertical stack of the pads, because we knew that we wanted the athlete to be able to change that throughout their season, not just after that first fit having to commit to it. So we said, where else on the bike do we have a very simple vertical adjustment method? And so right here at the seat post, we have a very simple vertical adjustment. You can loosen off the wedge clamp, adjust the vertical height of your post, tighten it down, and you're done. And so what we did is we applied that exact same mechanism to the front of the bike. You use a 4mm Allen key, you release the wedge clamp, just slide up and down the riser post, tighten it down, and you've got a new stack adjustment.
With the engineering behind the Cervélo, and in particular now the Cervélo P5X, athletes are at a huge advantage, and as a professional athlete you need every advantage. You want to be as streamlined, you want to be as aero as possible, and there's so many opportunities on the Queen K to be aero. You don't ever have to get out of your aero bars. And the Cervélo has an amazing aerodynamic advantage for the professional athletes, and they need every advantage they can get because this race can come down to seconds, and that podium can be determined by 0.5% over the course of the day.
The fifth priority on this project was aerodynamics. We really want to be more aerodynamic than the P5 of this bike, but carrying all the full items we talked about, the IronMan storage, the nutritions you need when you're doing an Ironman or a half Ironman. We have a lot of experience with aerodynamic design and testing at Cervélo, obviously, on bicycles. And so, you know, from our history, you can see that we use our DZ dummy, our mannequin, on all of our testing. And that's the key reason for that is because you never ride a bike without a person, right? So therefore, there's no point testing a bike without a rider. So we always test with a rider, which is our mannequin because of the repeatability. But the same thing applies for Ironman and for triathlon races when you have your storage and all your nutrition, right? When you're riding an Ironman, you never ride an Ironman without all the nutrition because you can't do it. And so there's really no point testing an Ironman bike or a triathlon bike without all the nutrition aboard because that's how your bike is used. So really, it's an extension of what we use currently, you know, with using the dummy on the bike to make sure the testing is most realistic as possible to real life. It's an extension of that, using all the nutrition and storage as well as the dummy to ensure that the bike is tested in the most realistic way possible.
I had pretty deep wheels on, and of course you've got all that fairing on the new P5X, but it doesn't seem to catch the wind. It doesn't seem to buffet you around any more than any other bike I've ridden, probably less than most bikes I've ridden.
The priority for this bike, as I mentioned earlier, was to be faster than the P5 with the Ironman setup with all the nutrition and storage aboard and water bottles. And so we tested it that method, and what we found is the P5X is faster than the P5 with that same storage and nutrition aboard. It's 30 grams faster over plus or minus 15 degrees yaw angle, so 3 watts faster over the yaw range. So that's an improvement over the P5. But however, it's not just faster with the storage and nutrition aboard. The P5X is also faster than the P5 with nothing aboard except the rider. In the P5X case, we include the speed pack because it's faster with the speed pack. On the P5, we don't include a bento box because it's slower with the bento box. But the two bare bikes together with just the speed pack on the P5X is faster than the P5 as well. So the bike is faster overall than a P5. We tested the P5X in the wind tunnel against all the key competition available at the time, and we found the P5X still to be the fastest bike out there with all the storage and nutrition aboard. Again, we tested in the most realistic case possible with the IronMan setup with storage and bottles. For the other bikes we tested, we actually asked the manufacturers how to set up their bikes as fast as possible, get them every advantage we could find. Because when you're really testing two bikes or comparing two bikes to purchase, you compare them in their fastest configurations, and that's what we did. But even with that, we found the P5X still to beat all the other competitors in the wind tunnel results. The sixth priority was stiffness. We want this bike to be the same stiffness or better than the P5, because the P5 has got good feedback we've had good feedback on the P5 from riders about how it feels when you're pedaling, how the stiffness, how the handling is. So that was our benchmark, and it's the industry benchmark as well. So our goal was to be better than the P5.
I do really feel like with added stiffness and the stability, you can just push it on the downhill.
That bike's super stiff through the bottom bracket, and when you're cranking on the bars, everything just feels really connected and solid.
One of the major benefits of the one-piece monocoque design is that it really lets you take full advantage of the carbon fiber strength and stiffness properties. You know, there's no interruptions in the fibers. When you have bond joints in frames, you don't get the stiffness across the bond joint. The fibers stop at the bond joint and then restart again. In this case, we have no places where that happens. The fibers are continuous across the whole frame. Really gets this maximum stiffness and strength out of this bike. The seventh priority was making it easy and safe to pack. One of the biggest issues triathletes have in traveling to races is packing their bikes, not knowing how to pack them safely, having them damaged during transit, losing parts. You know, it's very difficult to pack a complex, hard to take apart triathlon bike into a box and be sure it's going to arrive at your race in one piece, ready to run.
From the beginning I understood that I can do it myself, which was very important for me. That I'll be able to do it at home, put everything in the bag, take it off at the hotel, wherever I go for a race, and put it back together.
The bar is actually manufactured in two halves. And so when you remove the top plate, the bars can actually separate and will rest down on the sides of the fork, hanging from the brake cables. Here you can see the folded version of the bar. The halves have been separated and folded down, and then we provide this holster which allows the fork and bars to be protected and held in place. This is a really neat option for traveling with your bike, sticking it in your car, and it's also part of our bag system that we've developed.
So on this bike, we decided to go with disc brakes for a number of reasons. The key among them was design flexibility. Remember, this was 2.5 to 3 years ago when we started this, and disc brakes were not even common on road bikes back then, let alone on tri-bikes. But we really looked at, what the triathletes need. We've learned from other projects that disc brakes are important on tri-bikes. Some people say you don't need brakes on a tri-bike, but that's not true. When you're training, you need to have brakes that work on crazy descents and twisty roads. So that was important. We learned over the years that priority for the bikes. So looking at brakes, the disc brakes really gives us the flexibility of having any shape we want on a bike. It doesn't limit our design shape, our design space. If we would have started with rim brakes, you have to put a big blob right in front of the wheel in the critical aerodynamic spot, and that drives your whole design from there. So in this case, that was the primary goal for using disc brakes, was really to free up the design space so we could design the best bike we could with no limitations.
Hydraulic disc brakes are simple to work on. They've been in the industry for years. They've been on other product categories, road bikes, cross bikes, mountain bikes for years. Hydraulics to some, especially on tri-bikes, is brand new. But what's very neat about the TRP system that we use is it is a cable down to the caliper, and the caliper is hydraulic. So it's really no different than setting up any other brake. The through axle design is actually, with a little practice, as quick or quicker than a standard 9mm quick release. You're no longer fidgeting with the lever, trying to align the disc with the caliper and the wheel and the dropouts. It slides into place, a few quick twists and position the lever, and you're done.
I'm pretty good with those disc brakes. You can alter as you go around the corner, and I can't really wait to ride it in the Alps or the Pyrenees.
But with this bike, it's like riding a mountain bike down a steep hill. It's not even one thought in your mind going on, oh, am I going to make it? If you're too fast, you just brake, and you're much more relaxed, and you can go downwards much more aggressively. And this is another thing that it's hopefully going to be a big thing in other courses that's helping to ride the bike.
And I know a lot of around here, there's these 18% grades, and you can just ride the brakes and your discs are going to stop you, and you're not worried about the rim heating up. And so you just feel really confident on the bike, and I definitely like that.
I do think that the Cervélo P5X is probably ahead of the curve on that. I think in a few years, all bikes are going to come with disc brakes. It just makes sense.
There's actually quite a few benefits to using disc brakes. Obviously, the braking performance is a key one, right? Disc brakes perform in all conditions, regardless of weather. So that was a factor, of course. Aerodynamically, some of our research we had done, many years ago, 3-4 years ago, had already shown us that there was not a big penalty for disc brakes, and there could be no penalty. And so, that was a factor for us as well. One of the biggest ones is through axle stiffness. If you're using a through axle with disc brakes, it can really stiffen up the whole wheel fork interface and wheel frame interface. And that gives you benefits in handling, performance, ride feel, a whole bunch of areas. So all the combination of factors really drove us towards keeping disc brakes on this bike. So this bike is actually manufactured in the USA. It's made at Head Cycling Products in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The process of coming up with a vendor for this bike was long and difficult. Obviously, it's a complicated bike shape. It's very different than things we've done before. We knew from the start that it would be difficult to design and build this bike. So we need to find a partner that really could work with us and deliver the performance, but also really be a major partner involved in back and forth of design and layout development. So Head Cycling Products worked out to be that partner, and it was fantastic working with them to get those bikes made up. So all the frames are made in one piece. It's a full monocoque frame with no bond joints in the frame, so it's molded as a single piece in Minnesota. ENVE has a reputation for making strong and durable bars, and so their manufacturing abilities as well as their design abilities helped us with both the bars and the fork. Obviously the bars and fork are closely linked on this bike, and so we designed them as one system together along with MV.
So part of the initial testing that I've done with this bike also included going out and giving it to our professional athletes. So when they got on this bike, they were pleasantly surprised that it handled so well in windy conditions, down windy descents, standing up on the pedals, powering. So that was really their first impression. Then beyond that, once they got to ride it a little more, they really loved the braking. It stopped on a dime. It allowed them to carry speed into corners. And then lastly, they were able to translate their P5 Fit onto this bike so seamlessly. In fact, we got to this island with full production P5Xs, and within 20 minutes, they were confirmed riding it on race day. They were super comfortable, it felt fast, it felt stiff, it's everything they wanted, and all their kind of trepidations went away. I mean, it's the biggest race of the year, so it's a really huge decision to make to switch bikes so close to race day, but none of them had any hesitation. So we're gonna have a bunch of them riding it on the island. We're super excited.
So I guess everybody was expecting P6. For us at Cervélo, we have the 2, 3, and 5 series for good, better, and best. P5X is obviously our best, so it stands for a 5 and not a 6. Why P? Because P is our triathlon series. We have 4 series within Cervélos, R, S, C, and P. P is triathlon, so P5. And X just because it's a different platform, it's a different bike. It does so many things very well. It's like the multiply, you know, it's just that's where it's coming from. It's because of all the options, we can do so many things, and because it's so extraordinary, P5X came naturally. Every triathlete, whether you are a pro or a beginner, you are, yes, of course, in a race, you are chasing the others and everything, but it's all about looking for your personal best. That's what you are looking for race after race, when you train, when you eat, when you sleep, everything you do, it's all about achieving your personal best in the next race. So it's really a combination of personal and the best, because we've used our best technology, our best engineer, everything which was you could ever think of, and then so best, personal best.
I mean, when they pulled the blanket off, I mean, that was...
Wow, that looks different, you know, and it was really exciting to see a design that for me was so sort of out of the box.
I saw this new bike. I never heard about it before. I had no idea that there's a new bike. I saw it. I fall in love with the bike.
There wasn't any question in my mind that I would ride it on race day.
It's comfortable, it's fast, and it handles really, really well. It responds to every movement you make.
For me, it was a no-brainer in terms of racing the P5X on come race day.
It looks amazing when you just look at the bike, but once you're on it, it's even more, it's even better. Yeah.
You know, you get that excited vibe, and then right away you're like, this is definitely the bike I'm riding in the race.
Once you got to play around with the bike and see how easy the adjustability was and ride the bike, I mean, it was really pretty cool. You start to realize all the thought that went into it.
I was just blown away by how comfortable I felt and how stable and safe I felt descending at that high speed.
I have never rode a bike where I felt so good. And you know, you always think you're the fastest when you ride a bike you love. And that's how it is.
Even though there was more surface, I felt very stable in the wind, no issues at all, could stay aero even with the biggest, strongest crosswinds.
It was just very comfortable, more comfortable and faster.
It's really easy to get the position right. It's really easy to adjust.
We had quite a strong crosswind, and I felt really good on it. I could stay aero, I didn't have any problem with it.
It was a totally different experience. You know, the bike is amazing.
At the end of the day, the athletes have to take pride in their abilities and their skills and what they bring to this island, all the training that they've done, and be the best that they can be with their own talents and their skills. Cervélo is going to do the best, and they have done the best to put their athletes on the best bikes possible, to have personal bests. But at the end of the day, it comes down to heart and soul, and that's what we're all going to see on Saturday at the IronMan World Championships. Heart, soul, determination, and hopefully personal bests.